Welcome to I'm the End of the Words book reviews. And first things first, I want to thank Sleepy Reader, Damien, for recommending a book that I read. He recommended a few, and this is the only one I had in my collection at the time. So I read it. I finished it. I'm going to go over it now. It is Gene Wolfe's The Shadow of the Torturer. This is the first book in the saga. I think it's 4 books total in the Book of the New Sun saga. This is the first Timescape publishing in paperback, and this was published. Looks like 1981, and it looks like the book itself came out in 1980. At least it was copyrighted in 1980. This one may be a little shorter and a little less detailed than some of the other ones because the book was not complete. There's a bit of a story in this, but in all honesty, I feel like it's only a chunk of it. And after reading this, I went and discovered that Gene Wolfe actually had the entire script of the 4-part saga already scripted out before this was ever published. So, truthfully, it is just part of a story. Gene Wolfe, I don't think, ever intended to write this to be a solo book. He wrote it so all of them would be together. And this one alone lacks something. That being said, and the something is an end, by the way, but that being said, I did enjoy this. It's a science fantasy book of a time where swords are used, but there's parts that seem like it could be futuristic. Just getting into it, we have our guild member. The way his name is pronounced is not the way I put it in my head, I believe. His name may be Severian. In my head, I called him Severin because I delete I's out of names when I read, I guess. And he's about to get raised to the level of journeyman, which would kind of make him an actual torturer, not just a helper in the guild, if you will. And he falls in love with a young prisoner. I don't know why I had to say young. Falls in love with a prisoner named Thecla, who's being used to try to catch like this rebel. And by the way, there was also an encounter between Severin and this rebel. Volidus is what I called him. Don't think that was his name. Voladus. Like I said, the way I pronounce these names are not the way the names are supposed to be pronounced. The name itself, I'm not going to find it. Not going to find it. Not going to find it. Oh well. Severin falls in love. As she gets tortured, the torturing device they use on her is this one that kind of brings pain and length, and she dies slowly. So Severin goes against everything that he's ever been taught, gives her a knife, allows her to end her life, and then turns himself over. His punishment is to be sent away to this faraway city to kind of be their torturer, to be their carnifex, if you will. And this is the story of his travels from the center of the city, this sprawling, huge city, from the Citadel outwards until basically the end of the city. It seems like he travels a very far distance, but then it's also like he didn't travel at all. I mean, he did, but I think it's just trying to give the scope that the city is so large. Meets different characters along the way. And, I mean, gets in a duel, has to go to this crazy garden, this crazy building that is, there's different gardens in each room. There's a jungle kind of environment in one. There's a swamp in another. Meets these different characters. All the characters are beautifully just portrayed in this. Every character in here, I feel, was a complete character. As opposed to this book itself not being complete, every character, no matter how small they were in the story, they were a complete character. They had different motivations. They had different thoughts. They had different reasons for what they were doing, no matter how small they're part in the book. But I started to get annoyed at the end of this because there was honestly 15 pages left, and they introduced 2 new characters. And that's when I knew that this wasn't gonna end here. Gene Wolfe was not going to give me anything at all to leave on. It kind of does just end. There's no actual end to the story. I mean, a little bit of a nice touch where, by the way, it's being written kind of in first person by Severian, but somehow other things come into play. That doesn't matter. It's easy to understand. Gene Wolfe's writing is beautiful. It's gorgeous. The man knows how to craft a sentence, and it's a joy to read some of those sentences. On the other hand, it's a bit laboring at times. He'll explain a lake for 40 minutes, it seems, and don't really need it. One of the things I saw is that he would scape these beautiful paragraphs around a character, and then when they would get into dialogue, there was like nothing there. There was no flourish in the dialogue. There was no accents. There was no, hints of intelligence, almost, if you will. But it didn't take away from the book for me. After reading this, I did look up some other reviews and to see what people were saying about it. Not a lot of people are on board with it. The people who love it absolutely adore it. The people who hate it will tell you at length what they hate, why it's the worst book ever written. I'm in the middle, a little more towards the like, because I liked the story. I like the world it set up. I like the environment. I like the character Severian. The main point where I related to Severian was in his aspect that he can't forget anything. He remembers tiny details about everything, and no matter even things he doesn't want to remember, even things he wouldn't care to remember, he still remembers them, and it's kind of a burden, but it also helps him a bit. And I am kind of the same way. More to the things that I don't want to remember, things that I don't need to remember. They're wedged in my head. They will always be there. I can't get rid of them no matter what. One of my other favorite characters in this book was the blind head of the librarian guild. That's not the name of them. I can't remember exactly the name of them, but this man studied, read. Just that's all he did was read and read and read. And as soon as he got a plan, as soon as he started to know the collection, he started to go blind. And it's one of the saddest things ever. And Severian is very intimidated by him, also very off-put by him. But that was earlier in the story. Other people come into play. I love the aforementioned kind of environment, biodomes, if you will. Severian almost gets lost in the desert. I liked that. I liked that the one he related to most was the desolation, and it was the kind of the emptiness. And because everything in his life, there was so much, and there was so much thought constantly in his head, the desolation spoke to him. And I related with that. I can never stop thinking. The voices in my head never stop. They're running 1,000 miles an hour. And a desert would be a bit of a relief. There's nothing to see that you could overanalyze. Another little piece, when he's actually punished and sent away to travel to this other town, city, if you will, he gets given this great sword, the Terminus Est, I think. And his travels as a torturer, he gets recognized as a torturer in different ways, and it spawns other things. Gets caught up in kind of a theatrical thing. I loved that. I love that he kind of met a traveling, not a circus, but there's a giant and a beautiful woman who perform shows. They kind of tell Severian he's going to be a part of it, and he's like, yeah, whatever. He ends up leaving, ends up meeting up with them again, becomes part of the show. There are twists, there are different stories, but you can see that the little stories being told, those will get wrapped up, but there's an over-encompassing story that it doesn't end in this. That, honestly, this isn't a complete story. There are stories in here that can be enjoyed, but there won't be the relief of a complete story being read in this. Still enjoyed it. Will most likely hunt out the next one, because I know now that if I want to continue the story, I need to read all 4 of them. Because if he had it all scripted out before this one was published, the whole story's in all 4. I would like to know from you, Damien, if this is the best one out of the bunch, or if there's another one that was your favorite. I did enjoy it. Thank you again for requesting. No, not requesting. I requested. Thank you again for recommending this to me. Because it would have probably been a while before I picked this up. It was on my shelf, and it just I'd look at it and just like, some other time. But I'm glad I read it now. My rating on this book would probably be a 7 out of 10 because I did really enjoy it. The fact that hurt it was the lack of ending. But if you're into science fantasy and you like new worlds being set up around you, and these just it's a very well structured world. There's no question of what is happening in this world at most points. You know what's going on. You know where he's at. He describes the scenario and the environment very well. It's very well written. Sometimes the sentences get a little dense and you need to work your way through it, but if you're even an intermediate reader, this book is cake. So, Gene Wolfe, Shadow of the Torturer. Thank you, Damien. Thank you, anybody who watched. 7 out of 10.